Welcome back to another issue. I'm Beastie Boy.
I'm Table.
I'm Red.
And it is I, Shino Brando.
In this issue, we begin to celebrate Black History Month and discuss the works of many creators, and we start with the legacy of Dwayne McDuffie.
So, for those uninitiated with who Dwayne McDuffie was, Dwayne Glenn McDuffie was born 1962 to February 2011. He is most famous for creating the Milestone universe, which finally, after about 50-ish years of regularly syndicated comics, finally gave minorities across the spectrum representation. From his most celebrated work at DC and Man of Action, this episode will celebrate and bring to life Mr. McDuffie.
Oh, start with this. And I picked Damage Control. It first appeared in a 5-page story in 1988 in the Marvel Age Annual. That story was called The Sales Pitch. And it eventually got a few stories throughout the year, about 4. And it's turned up in the background of stuff all the way up until 2017. So Damage Control is alive and well, theoretically speaking. What it is this is a story that is centered around the aftermath of superhero fights. I mean, how many times have we on this show, or we just in person, talked about, okay, but what happens next? I mean, Man of Steel is famous for its ridiculously high collateral. And while this is a Marvel camp production, therefore, they don't have to deal with that level of bullshit, they actually get into a lot of stuff on their own. Because Damage Control was founded by Anne-Marie Hoag, H-O-A-G, and it was owned by Tony Stark and Wilson Fisk together. 50-50 shares on the company, which is wild. They operated out of New York City, a place called the Flatiron Building, which would turn up in stories to come. They did co-own it for a while. There was a lot of weird internal politics that resulted in both selling their stocks, and then Fisk was secretly waiting to buy back the company at a discount. He also tried to use it for, not quite insurance fraud, where he would break a bunch of shit and then profit off of the repair efforts. Someone actually made a movie about a Damage Control throwdown with Fisk. When I say someone made a movie, I mean in-universe. This was a fake movie that exists in Marvel. And in that movie, they got played up to seem like a big deal. So one day, the fucking Silver Surfer contacts them for help.
Excuse me?
One Edifice Rex, a former employee of Damage Control, has gained magic bullshit powers, and since he was a dick, he is threatening the cosmos. In this story, they meet with folks on the scale of Galactus and Lord Chaos.
Okay.
The final solution to this problem is to fire Rex, apparently. Damage Control turns up in Civil War. Because you know how Nitro blew a bunch of people the fuck up?
Including children, yes.
In our
Yes.
Who we want to see in MCU.
So the reason he was able to do it on the scale he did was because of mutant growth hormone. And he was provided it by Walter Declan, the current CEO of Damage Control. And one other nameless employee appears with him. And they were enabling his basically terrorism in the name of boosting their own profits. Throughout the Civil War, Wolverine proceeds to go on a war path against them, going overseas to attack their assets and eventually killing, quote unquote, spoilers, he doesn't actually die despite being stabbed in the eyes, Declan.
Such as comics.
They also appear again in this story when Sue Storm punches a hole through every floor of the Baxter building, and a guy named John Porter, who is a recurring character, shows up and assesses the damage at nearly $800,000.
God damn.
I know, right? I mean, she did punch a hole through every floor of the building.
Taxes out there must be ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. So,
no
Damage
wonder
Control.
Spidey and Mary Jane can't move out of Aunt May's house. They couldn't afford anywhere.
Can you imagine the insurance that goes straight to Damage Control?
Straight up, I want to know how they handled the Battle of New York, MCU style, the whole thing. Because apparently New York was okay the next day.
So, Damage Control continues to be in the background occasionally. They build a search and rescue unit, they hire some supers, which is pretty neat, and they continue their work through World War Hulk, collecting resources and trying to aid people, both supers and civilians. Now, I have alluded to this really heavily because this is one of my favorite things I've ever discovered. During the Reconstruction, one of Hulk's weird fucking machines causes the Chrysler Building to come to life. It wants to leave the city and see the world. But John Porter is like, what if you only leave 1 month a year, since no one comes to Manhattan in August anyway?
Oh, stop.
Which means any story that is Marvel, that is post-World War Hulk, that takes place in August, should not have the Chrysler Building in New York.
Oh,
This is one of my
God.
favorite things I've ever learned, okay? Can you imagine seeing the Chrysler Building in, like, Giza posing for a picture with the pyramids?
Jesus.
What if it went to space? You could have the Chrysler Building in space!
Stop this.
The Chrysler
Sorry,
Building
what?
is alive!
Good lord.
And it can move. And it
Always-
will in August.
What?
I want this so bad. Do you know how badly I want a story that's just like the travel logs of the Chrysler Building?
Today I visited Tokyo Tower. I told her she's beautiful. It's been a long time.
What do the people who work there do in August? Do they work from home? Do they go fuck themselves?
You know what I mean? He continues in his diary. She reminds me of the Eiffel Tower. I've been cheating on her this entire time.
Eiffel Tower wasn't respecting me like I needed her to. But damn, this one was right. This one was just right. Like,
I am so thankful that Damage Control exists, if only to give us this. So they also turn up in Spider Island, cleaning up the giant dead Spider Queen, and then having some internal problems because some guy named Jackal wants to steal the DNA for evil science
Oh.
reasons.
Great. Jackal's back. Way to
Clone
go.
Saga!
They also feature a little bit in Civil War II, Red's favorite story, in which Troll the Unhuman fucks with their stuff, and so Monstro has to come and deal with that. And then Troll the Unhuman joins Damage Control and becomes their spokesperson.
wow.
The Spidey villain team, the Wrecking Crew, are all former Damage Control employees. Like, all of them.
Yeah.
This group turns up in the Superhero Squad show and Ultimate Spider-Man in animated stuff. In the Ultimate Spider-Man, by the way, the CEO of the day, Mac Porter, is modeled to look like Dwayne McDuffie, who had only recently passed, and the episode in which they feature is dedicated to him.
Hence the name Mac. I get it now.
They come up in Spider-Man Homecoming, which is their most recent appearance, really, in which the government and Stark work together on the Department of Damage Control, which I think is way less cool. But,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not really sure which one is the Fisk alternative here. I say that as a joke. I just don't like MCU Iron Man.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you on that boat.
I am not subtle about my dislike. Shino, you mentioned this while we were talking about this earlier, that you were half sure that there was supposed to be some sort of show for Damage Control.
Yeah.
And you were kind of right. Because in 2015, there was a put pilot for a live action Damage Control show that was being developed by Ben Carlin. He was writing the script and was an executive producer, and it was supposed to come out in 2016. But as of December 2019, it is officially dead. I think it might be in part because of DC's series Powerless, which runs on a similar concept, focusing on an R&D department who works for Wayne Enterprises. And that show was eventually canceled, despite it actually being a lot of fun.
Too bad. Because like Damage Control sounds like a TV show. Like it sounds like a TV premise altogether. Like you could make that to a whole bunch of seasons and never lose steam, honestly.
Well, McDuffie pitched it as a Marvel sitcom.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. This is one of those stupid nerd conversations brought to life on the page. Like, screw, you know, who would win in a punch out. This is what I'm here for. Show me the logistics. Show me the paperwork. Show me the $800,000 Reed Richard has to pay because he and his wife got in a fight.
Quite honestly, now would be the good time to even like hop on. Like Disney Plus is a platform. You can easily just do like 5 episodes and call it a deal if you wanted to, or whatever. You know what I mean? And just throw it out there. It sounds like a concept that you could honestly have fun with. And it seems like, you know, it's too bad that no one's taking advantage of it.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got
Genuinely
8
fun.
goddamn seasons.
You know what I mean? Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got stuff, and
And
Damage
you're
Control
telling
sounds
me
like a way
Damage
better
Control
premise.
can't just get like 2 and we'll call it a day?
You know what I mean? Like I'm not asking for much. I'm not asking for much.
I would love to see this on screen so bad. I would love it so much. And you could just avoid cameos of superheroes in the funniest ways. Like you see a red shape swinging away from a bunch of webbed up damage and broken cars, and you're like, fucking Spider-Man. You know?
You know what I mean? God
Or like you
damn
could
it.
see the jet stream of somebody in an Iron Man costume.
Damn you,
Rhodey
Ruffalo
as
Hulk.
War Machine.
Why did you break stuff again?
Yeah.
Damn you, Scott Lang. Stop stepping on stuff. these are all concepts that they're not taking advantage of that they should. So if they're listening, you should do it.
And
I mean-
if you need writers, shit, you got people here.
We have the ideas, but
Yeah, right, you're right.
shit, guys. Damage control is just so fun, which I believe takes us to the next in our little timeline.
Be me. So the year was 93, and around that time, most black characters were pretty much muted or shelved. You only had a few running around. Some were just largely background supporting characters, and then you had Storm, which was probably the only one on the forefront. And her time was coming too, because I think in a couple of years you'd have the X-Men cartoon, so her fame would blow up a bit more. But in 93, things were a bit more slim, and so around that time, I think it would be June. Dwayne McDuffie, along with Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, and Derek Dingle, created Milestone Comics before it became Milestone Media. It was a simple comic platform that wanted to highlight minorities, particularly black characters, in a superhero format. It was presented to DC Comics, which they gave the AOK for, but they had no real control over the label itself, other than just the area of what they can really publish or what they couldn't publish, particularly content and covers. McDuffie, who ran the company along with the three others, really wanted to push the boundaries of what minority characters can really portray in comic format. So instead of just being the brute or the tech guy, they were much more. They could be the Superman, they could be the Batman, they could be Iron Man. So Milestone Comics blew up in that summer with just publications of all these characters, starting with Hardware and Icon, Blood Syndicate, and then last would be Static as the first four of first initial run. They would later on add more to their roster, including Shadow War, which would spawn like the Shadow Cabinet, and Zombie, which I think was a Asian American character for that matter. One of the first in their series. So they were reaching out to a whole lot of ethnic communities. And to be honest with you, when I was a kid, when I first saw these on the shelves, I was immediately blown away. And my best friend at the time there, who still is, a close friend of mine now, who is not black, by the way. He's an Italian French kid who strongly encouraged me to back these books up because he wanted me to have heroes that I could relate to, other than being told that I couldn't be Spider-Man because Spider-Man's not black and blah, blah, blah. So when I got into these books, it really did hit me hard because now I'm seeing, a particular Static, because there's someone, near my age bracket who's designed to be Spider-Man. He's designed to be the young hero out there trying his best. It really did, hit something for me, and not just me, but like a whole bunch out there as well. Gave us inspiration to, other than, the ones that we heard of before, but never got any page time anymore, right? Black Panther wasn't even a thing anymore. He was essentially shelved and gone. Blade wasn't, doing anything. Other characters are just all together. I think maybe Rhodey was still around too, but nothing much happening for them. So this was huge. And so it spawned a whole lot, even though it only lasted for just a few years. It did kind of fold, but they did salvage what they could out of it and became Milestone Media, which they then began working on the Static Shock cartoon. Static Shock ran for 4 seasons on the Kids WB, become one of the highest syndicated shows at the time. And what lent that help is that it was integrated right into the DC universe, where we had encounters with Green Lantern, John Stewart, and Batman. Static was probably my favorite comic out of the Milestone Media period. Static really hit it for me because, again, it's that young plucky hero that I grew up with. I honestly wanted to be him so bad, even though his costume in the beginning was kind of dorky. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Have you seen it?
The original costume or like the coat one?
Pre-coat, right?
No, the coat was there. The coat was adopted in. Pre-coat was like the very first. He just had the skin suit.
Oh, the first one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the skin suit. He needs the coat.
Yeah, and then he got a really large yellow jacket, like a jacket meant for someone who's like 3XL, and this 15-year-old kid's wearing it. It's super huge. It's big. Then when we got a revamp of his costume, we got something a little bit better later on in later years. But even though his costume was kind of like, okay, I still wanted to be that kid because his power set was cool. He was cool. He's even titled Rebirth of the Cool. He was like a retelling of Spider-Man in a sense, where he's put into a rough situation and then he gets powers out of it, and then he instead of just going down that path that's easy, he takes a different path of trying to clean everything up. And he was just that much more of a compelling character amongst everybody else in the label. And second to none. Honestly, even though they posted Icon as the big guy for Milestone, Static was the one who kind of just took over, man.
That might have something to do with the reason Spidey's so popular versus the reason Superman's so popular. Not to, get too far into anything, but Superman serves a lot of the time as a power fantasy and is deliberately kind of untouchable in a lot of ways, which appeals more, at least in my opinion, to a lot of white audiences, where Static and Spidey in the same venture are boots on the ground heroes for all that they spend their time in the air.
Yeah.
And they're just more tangible.
They're relatable, right? In every sense of the form.
They were like, in the same time too, they were just like normal kids before they had gotten their powers before that. And so living what we call a double life, like, they gotta juggle being, regular person, going to school, all that stuff, or just, living with their parents or relatives. And then also being a superhero on the side and trying to save people as much as they can. So it's kind of like that the interesting aspect of like, oh, I'm a kid. This person's like me. I can have powers because they live life like me. So it's just that that interest and pull that got like the younger audience too.
Yeah, man. Like throughout Milestone and Static's run, Dwayne McDuffie really wanted to push a lot. Not I don't want to say issues, but I guess he wanted to put a lot of things on the forefront. Man, he brought up like racism and homophobic, xenophobic, problems. Like he really targeted those issues and really wanted to make them because at the time that was the thing, right? Like, and it still kind of lingers now, but and it's a shame, but like racism's still there, homophobia is still there, which is sad, man. I mean, we've been here from the dawn of time. It's never going to change. You stop worrying about it. Like he did target those issues, and he really wanted to make that very aware. And that's how I grew up learning about all this stuff. Was just through all that. And I believe it made me a better person all for it, man. McDuffie is a smart guy who knows how to write, and I learned about humans. I learned about people through his works, not just because he had strong themes for the Black community, but like I had friends who were I had friends who were gay, I had friends who were Asian, I had friends who were Latin, like everything. So like I could see them in this page. I see their struggle and I understand them a bit more. It's just amazing stuff happening around. It's just too bad that most at the time looked at the label as an imprint for just Black folk, so the label couldn't really take off, and it's a shame.
But now, in a time where characters of these are starting to get the actual recognition they deserve, it wasn't that long ago that DC did an entire panel in which the legacy creators from Milestone said that they not only are they putting Milestone comics back in print, but they are working to build Static Shock as an entity, right? And
restarting yeah.
And so taking a page from Black Panther's book and the legacy that McDuffie brings to, his origin, his story, going back to the animated show, these things were not lost with time.
And I think a big deal is that comics as an industry hasn't shied away exactly from talking about a lot of these issues, but it spent most of its history doing so in metaphor and analogy. X-Men are a civil rights discussion. Yeah, but most of them are visibly white. So even if it's an allegory for Black people's struggles, it's not actually a depiction of it. Whereas McDuffie went and put characters of color center page and went, no, we are talking about their story. Actually, exactly this story. And that difference does matter.
Yes, it does. A whole lot. And that's exactly why I was able to connect with them so much more.
Beastie, I believe it takes it to you.
All right, brings it to now later in the modern age of roughly the 2000s. I bring to you Ben 10 franchise. So Ben 10, how it started out, Man of Action Entertainment had been approached by Cartoon Network to pitch 20 ideas in 20 minutes. And there was only one idea that got actually picked out of those 20 ideas. That idea had then become Ben 10 Classic, which is technically the first season of like young Ben 10. Which is not exactly what Dwayne McDuffie worked on, but that's how Man of Entertainment had started working on it and bringing it fourth round. Cartoon Network had then brought on Dwayne McDuffie later on after seeing his like fantastic work of Static Shock series and the Justice League Unlimited as well to revamp and build furthermore onto the Ben 10 franchise, which had then started on Ben 10 Alien Force. So from here on, up until I believe Omniverse, Dwayne had like basically a big hand into the Ben 10
franchise. A big old
franchise.
Bible, if memory serves me right.
Basically, yeah. He had wrote and or story edited all 46 episodes, and then he had worked on the sequel to Alien Force, which was then called Ultimate Alien.
The best one, in my personal opinion.
It was some interesting stuff, but yeah. So the combinations of how he was able to bring the different the connections of Ben meeting the different aliens of where they're from with the original host, or how they work or how to work his Omnitrix and all that stuff. Dwayne also was able to build on more of how Ben was basically developing into more of a leader later on into the Alien Force series, compared to his counterpart in Ben 10 Classic, where he's more of an arrogant brat, but he's like, oh, I have all these powers,
Right? You're a
right?
jerk kid, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've been rewatching it, and he's very much just a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, most of your worst traits are being a 10-year-old boy. I don't know
Yeah,
what to tell you.
Yeah, you're a snot, but all right.
Mm-hmm.
You'll
And
get better. And Alien Force 3 does that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But as well with the series that he had worked on, right? He was also involved in creating the fourth integration of the series, known as Omniverse. But from what I could tell or find, he was only being credited for writing a 2-part episode called The More Things Change, Part 1 and Part 2, with the help of Charlotte Fullerton and Matt Wayne.
For Charlotte Fulton being his wife at the time.
And the best part is because it's basically 4 series, and the video games and everything from that freaking franchise, well, all up into its most modern incarnation, Ben 10 holds its own legacy of not only being having access to some of those powerful cosmic entities in media, in children's television, but also showing how to be a real hero.
So the interesting thing I had found out about obviously his series, so with Alien Force, by season 3, you could tell there's technically a change of not a little bit of the story, but also how the characters' progression had basically seemed reverted in a sense. Yeah, so season 3 is basically just the less liked approach of the whole Alien Force section.
Okay.
But what happened is that basically, I think around the time it was worked on or just being released, the changes had been more to the story, and then due to his passing, the company had been panicking on what to do with the story and how to kind of work it properly.
Right.
And so certain things have been changed. So they're what Cartoon Network had done basically is that they reverted back to more going for the Ben 10, I guess, persona or kid mentality, and kind of brought that into season 3. So there is actually a video out there that kind of shows a comparison of season 1 and 2, showing of how he's developing into a leader, understanding of taking responsibility on what his actions were to per se either Gwen or Kevin. And then season 3, there's a comparison of him acting as if he's back in the trailer, but he's just acting snobby or self-pretentious of oh, but you appreciate me, Gwen, you can't be mad at me. It's that's
See, there's
that's
always
not...
there's always a weak entry somewhere, right?
And I think this is not even it's not his Dwayne McDuffie's fault at all. It's just whoever took over, just decided to change things up and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's stupid.
It's just a genuinely really good series. And while the first series did a good job of, representing child characters, McDuffie's series did a good job of developing those characters in the natural directions they would go and actually allowing for that kind of character growth, which is kind of fantastic to see, especially when so much children's media or just stuff that involves superpowers shies away from character development in favor of maintaining its episodic continuity.
Yeah.
You want
selling toys.
Yeah, you want to sell your toys, and you want everything to return to its neutral state at the end of the episode so that you can skip any given episode and there's no real consequences.
Yeah.
Ben 10 Ultimate Alien Ben 10 Alien Force and Ultimate Alien don't do that. There is certainly an episodic nature to them where you can watch most episodes without too much worry about it, but the characters get to be actual people with actual relationships to each other. Yeah. And it's really nice.
Example.
McDuffie knew how to write a person.
Exactly. For example, Gwen and Kevin ended up getting together, and when Kevin 11 decides to team up with Ben and they start fucking with the Omnitrix, because Ben wants access to the Master Mode always, Kevin gets struck with some sort of wave from the Omnitrix, and his skin is for a majority of the rest of the season, his skin is stuck in this sort of like, it looks like rocks, it looks like ooze, it looks like, different elements of the things he could control, but it's permanently stuck that way. So there's a definite time in which the episodes take place before and after that.
Yeah, along with like, season 3 too, like, just small tidbit I want to even mention about like, companies. Bandai was another company that had, I guess you could say meddled with how the series worked out. So like essentially too, you can see it more, I think, prominent in Omniverse, I believe. I think Ultimate Alien and then Omniverse is where like you can see they were kind of messing with it. But like in some of the toys, right, they were trying to get some toys out that, okay, well, what if we get an alien that can do this and then make, exactly, and something that can change or, affect a certain alien to have this other ability from a different alien. And it's like, why do you mess with it like this?
We need to sell toys. Did you not? Were you not there for the meeting?
I wasn't there. I was questioning them, and they still did it.
Joe Marketing and Jeff Franchise said we need to make toys for this.
We need to do what we need to do.
Yeah. And that's most prominent by a character. Oh, I don't remember his name, but he's basically Red Ben, Evil Ben in Ultimate Alien.
See, I know exactly who you're talking about.
I believe his name is a twist on Albino. But
Albedo.
There we go.
Albedo.
Yeah, so Albedo has a Ultimatrix, and it's red, which allows his aliens to go ultimate, which it's not just one toy. Now you get to make toys of the ultimate versions of Ben aliens. Ultimate Humongousaur, Ultimate Accelerate,
It almost belongs in the 80s, to be honest with you.
But yeah, so from what we can tell, obviously Dwayne had done a tremendous amount of work setting up the rest of the franchise and having his input on making Ben 10 when he got older, realistic and still, again, relatable to the growing audience that had grown up with Ben 10 Classic.
Yeah, it was his layout of how to do a storyboard is how, what they ran their structure off of afterwards, man. Like, that's why he got better until his passing.
But just before his passing, he did what I'm bringing to the table. And he did the animated version of All-Star Superman. This is a 2011 adaptation of Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley's series of the same name. What I will tell you, as a person who proclaims himself as a half Kryptonian, you could mark this as the end of the Silver Age for Superman. This is the time to put down the crazy quilting ability, put down where his hand could fold in half and a mini him could pop out.
Oh, stop.
It's time to retire the supercopter and move into darker storytelling.
You fly! What do you need a copter for?
Lord only knows.
Ask Thanos, he might know.
So, it is the 10th film of the DC Universe original animated movies, like Crisis on Two Earths, which Dwayne also happened to work on. This movie, the other hands in this movie's bucket are Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett. The Batman Beyond, Justice League Animated, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Original Series, like...
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. This movie...
How we actually enjoyed DC canon once upon a time?
Wow.
Yeah, them.
Yeah.
Them. The story of All-Star Superman is that he gets duped by Lex Luthor, and he goes too close to the sun, like the Icarus he truly is, and he gets oversaturated in solar radiation. And from minute 5 in the movie, he's dying. And so essentially
it's cancer, like...
Yeah. Well, super cancer, but yeah.
Yeah.
With that knowledge, after it's, throwing his powers into overdrive, because of course it would, he does the thing that this time, and in modern parlance, he hasn't done in a while. He goes up to Lois Lane, and he rips his shirt right in the middle, and shows that he is in fact Superman. And it takes Lois probably 20 more minutes of the movie to really believe that Clark Kent and Superman were one person, not two different people. This guy went so far to hide both identities. When there was a Superman parade or something, and Clark Kent needed to be there, he hired a guy to put on the Superman costume, and he was Clark Kent taking pictures.
Look, he is a master of identity protection.
I mean, at that point, if you pay a guy to dress up, I mean, doesn't he know that you're up to something then? Like,
right, and Lois does
suspicious?
the most Lois thing with that information I've ever heard in my whole life. In my personal opinion, Lois needs to be a little bit, not bratty, just bossy.
Yes, that's the best.
So once she finds out and puts 2 and 2 and makes 4, so she's like, so Superman creates this dinner for her because he's also extremely more smart than he actually was. She looks at him and goes, "So you're telling me the truth now, but for all these years you've been lying to me?"
Yikes.
I mean, hey.
That
Be upset about.
Yeah, that's the Lois Lane response to that knowledge. As an eternal journalist and always seeking the truth, to be lied to repeatedly by someone who is also doing that same job, and you figured
And
was your
trust
closest
and
friend.
care about.
Exactly. That's the Lois Lane
Essentially-
response.
That's right. Essentially, Clark Kent was always and has been the biggest liar.
Damn.
This movie features Jamie Denton as Superman. Now, across the internet, I found that not many people liked his voice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mostly because it wasn't the same as Justice League the Animated Series or...
Tim Daly and Newburn were really good voices.
Iconic, really.
Yeah.
Right. While Jamie Denton does an absolutely spot-on job for what he's given, there is one problem with this movie, and that is it tries to juggle all 12 issues in one go. So Grant Morrison, who recently came out as trans, by the way, so fun story.
Good for them.
Yep.
Right. They had put that, he comes across survivors of the exploded Krypton. And they are Bar L and Lilo L. Some sort of relation. It's never fully said out loud.
Lilo L?
Yeah. Lilol.
Lilo and Stitch? No, I'm joking.
I was thinking the same thing, Beastie.
Right.
We all grew up
Continue,
right
sir.
in around the same time, didn't we, Chino?
Yes, we did.
Ha!
Anyway, they show up from Krypton, and they're like, "Oh, these are puny humans. These are ants compared to us. Why on all that is good and super do you let them, why do you go native that way?"
Why have you conquered them yet?
Exactly. And, after trying to kick their ass and ultimately losing because the guy's dying,
Everything
gain the knowledge and then fall very weak. They fall weak because they followed the same trajectory as Kal-El's pod when he left Krypton, oh so long ago, and they passed through a kryptonite belt. And so by the time they got to Earth, they were so poisoned, they couldn't conquer the Earth if they wanted to.
Oh, well, you're regular.
Get wrecked. Space says you can't do that.
And so Superman takes them to the Fortress of Solitude, puts them on, a surgery-like table, and just when it seems that Lilo L is starting to fade away, Bar L goes, "I know you have access to the Phantom Zone. You know what you must do, and we forgive you for it."
That was better
And so
than-
Superman puts the last of his kin, because there's no Supergirl in this show, puts the last of his kin in the Phantom Zone. Never to be seen, never to be heard from, he finally puts his own kind. Not behind bars, but away forever.
Essentially behind bars.
Right? So they can live forever, because time doesn't work the same in the Phantom Zone as it does here.
That's right.
Yeah, they don't die there. They just are there.
Right.
Yeah, they just linger.
And so that's where they lay. Eventually, this has taken place sometime after Brainiac has captured the city of Kandor. And Superman's last mission before he has to face Lex Luthor, because of course he does.
Lex Luthor will never stop being a problem. That's just how he is.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Superman finds an abandoned planet, give or take about 3 weeks away. Superman flying speed, so God only knows exactly how far it is. And takes the bottle city of Kandor to a planet and lets them colonize. Because he has yet to find a way to make it grow and find a place here on Earth. So not only does he basically bury his own kin, but he spreads new life through his own kin.
There's hope yet.
And that's what this movie really exemplifies. All up into the final battle, where Lex Luthor has decided that he's going to synthesize basically a Superman serum, because he has, in some way, shape, or form, this super smart bald dude has, written down how to create Superman's genetic code.
Because Lex Luthor is Lex Luthor.
Because he's Lex Luthor.
Of course he has.
Yeah, of course he has, because he's bald and smart. That's the way it goes.
It's just how it works, man.
What else would he do? Shine his forehead? Come on.
Honestly.
Only because I can't reach the back.
So he creates this serum and takes it and starts to wail a little bit on Superman. But then with this over-accelerated intelligence, he sees that all of us are connected. And the way atoms move, and the way gravity moves, and the way it moves the building blocks of the universe, and how all life here on Earth is all sort of tethered together.
Mm-hmm.
He sees the forces. He sees radio waves. He sees the ultraviolet spectrum. Finally sees Superman through his own eyes.
What he sees.
And a lot of this is a little bit more than allegory to seeing people's views through our own eyes. Dwayne McDuffie spent a lot of his life trying to put people of color into the spotlight. And I should replace trying with succeeding.
There you go.
Because now that, people grew up with Static Shock, crossing over with the Justice League show, and when we brought up the Milestone universe, we forgot to mention that Static beat the Joker.
Oh yeah, and
Something that the Justice League in that series not only failed a handful of times, but in this particular scenario, couldn't straight up do. This is not only the end of the Silver Age, and there was a sequel series, in the comics anyway. Let me give some context here. At the end of the show, Superman is exploding, and the sun is blue. Sun can't be blue. It's blue because it's running out of energy. And so Superman, because his cells are basically exploding like little tiny suns, every fiber of his being is breaking down and being expunged into sheer energy, he flies himself into the sun and puts the sun right again. What I'm trying to get at is that All-Star Superman is probably the best DC animated movie thus far.
Yeah.
And in 9 years, 10-ish years, depending on when this episode comes out, I personally believe it's yet to be outdone. It does fall kind of flat because it tries to balance a handful of villains all at once, and it just fucking cruises. There are no brakes on this train.
no, there's not. There's no. It's pretty good, man, from start to finish.
But
Nice
it's a
shot.
wonderful
Trying to
story.
cover 12 issues in one go.
Yeah,
Gotta
in,
go.
in about 45 minutes. Yeah, that's my pick. It's All-Star Superman.
Right on.
Solid choice.
Great pick.
All solid choices today.
However, there is in fact one that in pre-planning for this episode, we all agreed was the best. And it's explicitly not any of our choices for one reason.
Because we'd all want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that series is Justice League and Justice League Unlimited.
God damn it, because it's so well done. It's so
Yeah.
goddamn well done. Oh man.
Not even a fucking question.
No, man. Like when you look for if you look for a low point or like a bad run in that series, you're not finding it. It doesn't even exist.
Everything from it being 2-episode arcs, basically, to the bringing in of the entire extended universe, where you bring in your Batman Beyonds, you bring in your Static Shocks, you start to bring in the Green Lantern animated show, which isn't as bad as people say it is, but that's my hill to die on. But this show took each and every hero we have ever been introduced to and breaks them down, sells them to you in a silver platter covered in gravy.
If you haven't seen Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, that was supposed to be a arc in Justice League that would birth the Justice League Unlimited show, but it didn't get that run. So if you want to, you can actually use that film as the in-betweener because it actually is the bridge to Unlimited by script. So you can use that.
Oh.
So much so it borrows the voice cast.
Yeah, it's just like literally the same voice cast. So you can literally use it as the in-betweener.
And that voice cast is unbelievable.
Oh, phenomenal. Always.
Mm-hmm.
It's Kevin Conroy as Batman.
There's a reason that people were a little bit disappointed with the All-Star Superman voice actor. Not because he wasn't good, but because Justice League and Justice League Unlimited had cemented the voice of Superman in their heads.
Like same with Conroy. Like if you watch any other content and you don't hear Conroy as Batman, it just doesn't seem right. Like you accept it, but it's just like it's not Batman. It's not Batman.
It's not my Batman.
And also, like, character development in this show is, bar none, the best there's ever been on TV.
Yeah, and it's the use of all these B and C tier characters that you've never heard of. Like, I dare for you to like not know who the Question is. Watch this show and be like, I want to read nothing but the Question now.
Right. It's the expansion of the relationship between Shaira Hall Hawkgirl and John Stewart Green Lantern, who end up having a kid, and then it's in Batman Beyond.
I think there's even an episode where they pay homage to all the all-star comic characters that they absorbed, and like they had an episode where just they used nothing but Shining Knight, Vigilante, Green Arrow, and Speedy, and like a couple others that you may not even know. Yeah, like someone you just never even heard.
There is a reason that, well, in 2016, so very recently, who's counting, that when Scott Snyder was putting together his Justice League, because that's the book he was taking over, he put on Twitter a poll on who should be on the team, or what series should we start with and then build from there. It was 95% in favor of the Justice League animated show. So
That's the score, man.
this is why Hawkman's most famous run was allowed to happen by Robert Venditti. This is
Yeah.
why Hot Girl actually has something to do in that fucking book. This show left a legacy that Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett have yet to abandon. There was a Blu-ray movie. It was like where the Legion of Superheroes showed up, and that's
always,
canon.
Yeah, that's always fun.
There was the Nightwing and Harley Quinn movie, which people didn't like, but it's still there, and it's done in the Bruce Timm style.
Say what you want about the Nightwing Harley Quinn movie, because there's a lot to be fucking said. Let's be clear. But it was, for a lot of people, that was a, hey, your childhood's not over yet, idiot. Come check this out. And
Right.
that was pretty great.
And even
Yeah.
in the medium that all these ideas came from, back in comics, there are comics out right now where it's Batman the Animated Series, The Adventure Continues. This universe is not only continued to being played in, but its legacy will not be forgotten.
All in part to McDuffie. Thank you. It speaks, right? Between our four picks, it's all different stuff, and yet it just shows you how much, like, how much he knew and what he could write and all the influence he could leave behind. You know what I mean? Like, he's even worked on Scooby Doo. Like,
What's
you know
new,
what I mean?
Scooby Doo?
It just speaks, man. So continue to rest in peace. It's a shame that we lost you pretty much 10 years to the day. Well, not to the day, but 10 years to the month. And you left behind a whole lot. And I'll always thank you for creating Static, because that was the guy for me, man. So, thank you.
There are creators out there who you can go, okay, yeah, they changed their industry. Dwayne McDuffie changed the entire face of comics. From Marvel to DC to Milestone to how it was presented on screen, the animated stuff that keeps people going to see DC movies even today when they suck. So much of so many people's favorite parts of comics come from this man.
We can thank him for the minority ethnic renaissance in comics.
Yes.
I would say without this man's hand in every pot somebody could book him on, our heroes would not be our heroes today.
Yeah, I
With
think
that
brings us
heartfelt
to-
goodbye, Beastie, if you please.
That brings us to the end of this discussion with bringing us to our socials. Our Twitter is at Crusade Nerd, our Instagram at Nerd Crusade, and we upload every Wednesday to YouTube, and you can download any previous episodes or listen on your mobile device through the Anchor.fm website or wherever podcasts are found by searching Nerd Crusade.
And that's to be continued.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, go ahead and button mash a thumbs up. If you want to swing by when we have a new video, web up the sub button. Oh, and while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified by.